The most beautiful uniform in all of sport. If they brought back the gray stripes, this thing is so far out in front of everybody, you can't touch it. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Hey, welcome into Juck on Bucks. Are we spoiled or what? Another Boom Day Sunday, as this is getting really fun, and we're seeing a totally different thing than we're used to. Now, we're going to talk about the news here, and then I want to talk about just kind of like the difference we're experiencing this cycle versus what we're used to here. So the Buckeyes get another great piece of news here as Emmanuel Ruffin, defensive tackle from Bessemer, Alabama, commits to the Ohio State class of 2026. He makes 24 members now in the class of 2026, and he won't be the last. And this is fantastic news. Ohio State's run here, right before they started this real surge here the last couple of weeks, the past few guys they had been adding were 3-star developmental guys, which you need and you want. And based on the evaluations they've done, most of them really, really valuable guys, in my opinion. But it's not something that moves the needle for a lot of people and gets them excited, and I understand that. And it looked like, all right, if you're just going to finish off the class packing in 3 stars, you know, nobody's really going to get any excitement out of that, and everybody's going to be kind of feeling sour at the end of this class, and I hate that. I like the positive energy and the positive momentum, and now what we're seeing is certainly bringing that positive energy and positive momentum, but better than that, great football players. And I think the Buckeyes got a really good one out of Bessemer, Alabama, in Emmanuel Ruffin, who's verified at 6'4", 300 pounds, a blue chip prospect, composite top 200 player in the country. Both Rivals and 247 have him as a top 20 defensive lineman in the country. And look, that's fantastic. A guy who, body type, we don't have a lot of them, right? We don't have a ton of them around here. And Emmanuel Ruffin is one of those dudes, man, one of those big old hosses you're used to seeing on an Alabama or a Georgia defensive line. Just a big, massive man, 6'4", wide-shouldered dude. And at 300 pounds now, you know, this guy probably played about 325 when he's at Ohio State. So primarily in high school, playing defensive end, a lot of times standing up, but he projects to me to be a one tech. So Caden McDonald, and probably close to Caden McDonald's weight when it's all said and done here. 300 pounds right now. The kid's really strong, really heavy-handed, gets off blocks very easily in high school football, as you would imagine. Not super twitched up, not super fleet of foot, but at his size, you know, if you get a guy that's twitched up in fleet of foot, well, that's a 5-star that cost you a couple $1 million. He's not that. Constant effort, though. Constant effort, which you love to see out of big guys, pursuing down the field, which is just, you know, you rarely see that. It's all over his highlights. And this, unbelievably, is now the 3rd player from the state of Alabama that Ohio State has added in the class of 2025 and 26. All of them blue chip players. None of them Alabama wanted. Last year, Ohio State added defensive end Zion Grady, who at one point was committed to Alabama, as was Turbo Rogers. Both of them committed to Alabama. Kalen DeBoer's regime comes in, and they don't really want either of them. So they both get out of the class. Now you've got Zion Grady making an impact as a freshman. By the way, one of our questions for the pregame show was, would we see Zion Grady start to eat into Bo Atkinson's snaps? It feels like it's time. He did that yesterday, and we'll talk about that tomorrow on Monday's show. It is time for Zion Grady to start making a push here, and we're going to start seeing more and more of him, which is excellent news. I think 12 to 15 snaps yesterday, and they weren't trash time snaps. But both of those guys, Zion Grady, Turbo Rogers, top 100 overall players. Neither of them Alabama wanted. The Buckeyes go in and get them out of the South, which was, you know, incredibly impressive. Naeem Offord was committed at 1.2. So you get those two, and it kind of opens the floodgates. It gives guys in that state, all right, well, these guys went there. I can go there too. It's just a mental thing. So with our guy Ruffin here, the Buckeyes had recruited him and he had narrowed down his decision. And we're talking a guy who's had offers from everywhere: Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, the holy grail of recruiting. And you can go ahead and throw in Texas and LSU and all the rest. If you got those ones, you got everybody else. And he narrowed it down to Ohio State and LSU. And he had visited Ohio State and he really liked it. It was a guy we talked about often on the show. And then he set his decision date. And then it kind of became apparent that not only did Ohio State not really go all in and they weren't pushing and were kind of backing off, but so was LSU. And I felt really bad for the guy as he kind of, I don't know if they told him straight up or if he just got the gist, but he ended up postponing his decision date. And then he winds up at Colorado. Now, what does this all tell us? Why did they back off of him? Why did he end up at Colorado when he had all those offers from all the big time schools? I don't know. I don't know what it tells us. But what I can say is now that we've seen him put senior film on tape, Ohio State has doubled back and gone after him hard. Got him to, essentially flip from Colorado, though he decommitted first, little time, and then commits to Ohio State. And I love it. And we could think, all right, maybe this has something to do with one of the members of the defensive tackle class. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they just really like the player. I think it's more of that. And I also think we're seeing a bit of a philosophical change in a couple of ways. One, in that Matt Patricia wants bigger bodies on the defensive line. We're seeing it with the defensive ends that they are currently trying to flip. Jimmy Frisco, Saliufu, not Dre Quinn. They were already in on Dre Quinn for a while, but Jimmy Finch, big guys, big defensive ends. Darius McKinley, these are all like 270-pound defensive ends that'll probably be a little bigger in college. And Kari Wilder's a big defensive end as well. Now we're seeing it in the interior when we add Emmanuel Ruffin in with Jameer Perez, who is a 6'3.5", 340-pounder, and then Cam Brickle at 6'2", 300. These are big dudes, man. These are big dudes. And now we've got two really big potential one techs here. So I think we're seeing a philosophical change in the fact that they're getting bigger. And I also think we're seeing a philosophical change, which I absolutely love. And they said they wanted to take about 90 scholarship guys, right? After it went from 85 to 105, but no walk-ons. Now, the walk-ons are technically grandfathered in, but once they've filtered out, they're gone. So 90 is the target number, but you can take more if you want to. However, you got to have them on a partial scholarship, and it takes away from your cap, takes off the salary cap. So you don't want to just be, going up to 105 because it's less money you can spend in your revenue share. So you got to be careful there. But if you're going to take more, go over the number, and you're going to take flyers, best to do it when you run across a 6'4", 300-pounder who wants to play for you, right? You want to do it on the offensive and defensive line because you want more shots at hits. You want more shots at hits on the offensive and defensive line because, it's a developmental position and sometimes they don't develop. And if you take a couple extra every cycle on the offensive line and the defensive line, you got this natural, they work themselves out if they can't cut it at Ohio State. And in the past, when they couldn't cut it at Ohio State, before the transfer portal era, before, things are the way they are now, these guys would be kind of screwed. They either sit the bench forever or, what are they going to do? And a lot of times we saw guys get processed out, which was kind of a cruel world back then. Now they get to go to the transfer portal. They get to be a guy from Ohio State, and that makes them very attractive to other places. Everybody wants a guy if they're not, an upper echelon school. We've got a guy from Ohio State. That's exciting for them. So they really want him. And the kid gets good coaching, good nutrition, good strength and conditioning while he's at Ohio State. So he ends up with a leg up when he goes to his new school. So now it's an ideal situation for both parties. And that's why I like taking a couple extra on the offensive and defensive line. When we look at this defensive line class, obviously we've got Kari Wilder as the headliner out on the end, who I think is going to play a little more like Caden Curry in the Matt Patricia scheme all over the place. And I think he's going to do it as a true freshman. And when we look at the defensive tackles, you've got your headliner in Damari Simeon, who is a top 5 defensive tackle in the country per Rivals, 24/7, a much different ranking on him. Big disparity. I believe Rivals is the accurate one here. I'm really high on Damari Simeon. St. Augustine High School out of New Jersey, just a beast. Unbelievably strong kid for his size, really fast, really twitched up. Love this dude. Lateral movement. I mean, it's all there, and he's violent. So between him and Kari Wilder, I think you've got 2 absolute dudes. Then at defensive tackle, you've got Jameer Perez, who at 6'4", 3.5, 6'3.5", 360 to 340 pounds. He'll play at probably 340 at Ohio State. He is a developmental guy. He's not as far along as Emmanuel Ruffin is right now in his development, but it's all there. It's all there, and it'll get there. And a guy who, to me, regardless of the ranking, and he's a 3-star top 800 guy in the country, doesn't matter because he fits a need and a unique position a unique body type that you didn't have on the roster. You don't have any of those guys. Now you've got one, and that allows you to do something that you couldn't do before. So I love getting Jameer Perez in the class. Emmanuel Ruffin, I would probably slot him right behind Damari Simeon if we're just going to kind of order this in talent. Then you've got Cam Brickle, and Cam Brickle at 6'2", 300 pounds, who is from Pennsylvania. He went to his local school in Pennsylvania his freshman year, then out to California, then back to Pennsylvania, then down to IMG, where he is playing his senior year now at IMG. And at IMG, matter of fact, I'm going to get a hold of somebody I know at IMG and ask about him. Down at IMG, didn't start this year, did not start his senior year, which, at most schools you would say, well, that's pretty concerning. But at IMG, not so much, because IMG, don't forget, they also had, Preston Carey at defensive tackle, who Ohio State was also in on, who signed at Georgia or committed to Georgia. So they got dudes, right? They got plenty of dudes that could potentially be starting over him that makes for a good reason as to why he wasn't starting. But, of all the guys, there's maybe a little bit of a question mark around him more than anyone. And maybe that's the reason Ohio State also wanted to add another one. But at any rate, I like having 4. I think it's fantastic. In addition to those 4, we've talked about the fellas on the outside that Ohio State's after, in Jimmy Finch and JJ Finch and Jimmy Frisco Saliafu. That is Jimmy Finch, an Alabama commit, Saliafu, a North Carolina commit. They offered Darius McKinley, an LSU commit. These are all bigger bodied defensive ends, which kind of goes in with the Patricia 3-4. Go get the bigger defensive ends. Kari's a bigger defensive end. And now it's just the entire defensive line is getting bigger. It's just getting bigger. So when we look at One Tech moving forward, should you lose Caden McDonald, and why I also love getting Ruffin, you lose Caden McDonald, let's say, to the NFL. Next year, your starter would be most likely Will Smith Jr., unless you were to go to the portal and land a really expensive guy in the portal, which is obviously risky. And we've seen this now on the offensive line for the first time. We've kind of seen one go really south, right? A big money guy go really south. Saw that on the offensive line this year. We've also seen a couple that have just, bigger money guys in the class that have kind of been misses. That haven't really produced what you thought they might. On the interior of the defensive line, those guys are as expensive as the left tackle. If not more. They're about the same. They're incredibly expensive guys. So if you're talking about a proven one, super expensive. If you're talking about an Anyanwa one, who is a guy that is at a lower level, but everybody thinks he's got it, not quite as expensive. At any rate, will they go that direction? I don't think they will. I think they'll try. But when those guys hit the market, it just shoots up so high for them. It just, I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see him taking the budget hit on it. But the good news is you've got Will Smith Jr., who I think has what it takes to be that guy. I think he does. Not what K-Mac is, but he's really damn good. After him, that's where it gets a little sticky. You got Eric Mensah. You've got Maxwell Roy, a true freshman. Then you've got Emmanuel Ruffin, and you've got Jameer Perez. And behind Edric Houston, you've got potential high-level starters in Jarquez Carter and Damari Simeon, and then guys who I think are rotational guys in Jason Moore and Trajan Odom, and maybe Jason Moore's experience catches up with him, and he ends up passing up those guys. We'll see what happens. But at One Tech, to add another option, because you just have Will Smith and Eric Mensah, who are, now going to be the upperclassmen next year. In the event that K-Mac leaves, it doesn't look great. It doesn't look great. And that's why I love adding Emmanuel Ruffin. So that's fantastic. Now, as far as Ruffin, the need to muscle up is there, but the frame is there and the frame is ready. And now this class ranked number 9th after the commitment of Jay Timmons, was ranked 9th before the commitment of Jay Timmons, now has moved up to 8th. And after this one, it's now going to move up into 7th, overtaking Tennessee, which is incredibly ironic that it's overtaking Tennessee because Ohio State is about to swipe Legend Bay from Tennessee. That news should be dropping any day now. Unfortunately, the Kevin Brown situation is pretty much over. Kevin Brown, the Penn State offensive lineman, is no longer really in the picture. Guy wants to, whatever. He doesn't like the limelight, get it, whatever. It's pretty clear in his actions that he's just probably wouldn't fit in Columbus anyway, right? I mean, this guy is really shy, wants to go to West Virginia, wanted to go to the farm at Penn State. Whatever, not everybody's a fit. But not being able to get Kevin Brown kind of spoils the opportunity for the potential of getting back into the top 5 unless we see something really wild happen from now to signing day. But I don't see that happening. Now, CJ Bronaugh could potentially move the needle here and launch the Buckeyes into a top 6 finish, but Legend Bay won't. Legend Bay won't move the needle to that level. So CJ Bronaugh, the cornerback, would be the 3rd cornerback in the class. And he is a dude with a ton of potential. But when you talk about Jordan Thomas, and now you talk about Jay Timmons in the cornerback room, and we talked about my confidence with getting Jay Timmons, not just that he liked Ohio State, but that you had the money and you had the budget because you were low on numbers to be able to make sure you got him. And that means now we're talking about another guy in CJ Bronaugh, also a highly rated kid with insane measurables, crazy fast. Well, how much money do you have left in the budget at corner when you've got Jordan Thomas and Jay Timmons in one class? That's a very, pricey class right there. Pricey position group for 2 freshmen. Those are 2 really high-end guys. And the agent of Jordan Thomas, Ohio State publicly said he's our number 1 guy on the board. They said it to Jordan Thomas and his agent. Well, if you recruit me and tell me I'm the number 1 guy on your board, doesn't matter what I'm ranked, right? I'm your number 1 guy, right? Well, you're going to pay me like your number 1 guy? And his agent talked about that conversation with Ohio State. So, saying those things can be used against you. Rankings can be used against you as well. At any rate, things are heating up. Things are getting fun and so much different than classes of the past. Now, been a lot of upset people about this class throughout. And when everybody talked about, you'll get the people that say, well, it doesn't end until December. It doesn't end until December. But the truth is, Ohio State under Ryan Day has never really operated like this, where they've surged late. They've always gotten their class early, highly rated, and then it slowly drops down. That's how it always is. You're playing defense, you're worrying about guys flipping out, and then other people come up and just catch you and pass you, and you watch Ohio State drop down the board. This one, the exact opposite. The exact opposite is it looked like Ohio State was pretty much kind of settled in, looking for just a couple more pieces about 3 months ago, 2.5 months ago. And now they're taking advantage of some turmoil around the country, in addition to guys like Dre Quinn, who decommitted from Clemson. I guess you can count that as part of the turmoil. But they're seizing the opportunity. You got to wonder, would they have if we didn't see all this movement? They were certainly going to get another cornerback. Like the Jay Timmons thing or somebody like Jay Timmons had to happen. But would we have seen some of these other moves? I don't know. I don't know if we would have or not. At any rate, there's no sense in arguing about it. The bottom line is we should all be happy as the class keeps getting better, and this keeps getting more and more exciting for all of us who love to follow this stuff. So that's that with that. Appreciate you guys for joining me. I will see you tomorrow on Juck on Bucks. Juck on Bucks out.